Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we're going to chat a little bit about health and fitness during the first trimester. So, this is going to be part one of a little mini series that we're going to do.
Yeah, I'm super excited because I know that this is going to help a lot of people out, and actually some people that are very close to me out that I will not be able to mention at this time, but very good timing that this is going to be coming out soon. So yeah, I've got a couple friends who are navigating the start of this journey.
Ooh, we're going to have a conversation off air, maybe.
Yeah, well, I'm sworn to secrecy, so I might have to tell you later. So
Dang it. Okay. All right. Well, I'm really, really excited for this, obviously, because I've just gone through this and we have a lot of our clients who are expecting as well. So, and then ironic, my second one just woke up, so I might have to go grab her, which
nice.
is, yeah.
We'll just have a
Yep.
special guest through trimester one.
Yeah. Nope. I'm going to have to go grab her. So,
Yeah. But basically, how we're going to structure this is trimester 1, 2, 3, and then I believe the fourth episode is postpartum. Yes. And so basically, this is going to be your all encompassing guide to training, nutrition, lifestyle management, the changes that are going on in your body in each section of this journey. So you kind of just know a little bit more what to expect from a trusted source, because there's so many myths and things out there that you're going to hear that are like either old wives' tales or things that just have been disproven by research or by anecdote that has really, really well founded in evidence and in our understanding of the human body, that can be really encouraging for women going through their first or second or third, whatever, pregnancy, because I think what we all really want out of this at the end of the day is we want to feel like ourselves through and after the pregnancy. We want to maintain as good of a body composition as we can. And most importantly, carry a healthy pregnancy to term, right? So I think we really want to hit on all of that and how to really safely and effectively manage your health and fitness and not have to just be scared of doing anything because your body is now carrying a child, is now delicate, can't handle anything. That's not necessarily true, but we want to show you where those gray areas and those lines are.
yeah. And so I think that what's really important too, and kind of getting into like the myths and misconceptions of nutrition and exercise during pregnancy, is a lot of women kind of have this like realization like, oh crap, like now I kind of need to, they feel like I need to get my stuff together. Right. And so
Yeah.
there's also this misconception, and this was, I think, kind of like right about when I got pregnant. There was this belief that like, oh, like you can only continue exercise if it's what you've been doing before you got pregnant. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of been debunked. So I don't want you to feel like you can't start
Yeah.
exercising once you get pregnant. So this episode is just for any expecting moms who just want to maintain or actually want to start working towards your health and fitness goals during your pregnancy. So
Yeah.
I do want to kind of emphasize that like this is all just kind of like general advice. It's not a substitute for professional medical conversation that you have with your doctor. So always
Yeah.
discuss with your provider if you're going to make any sort of changes, and especially if you do have any sort of like pre-existing conditions or any sort of complications, because as we know, every different person, and not only that, but every single pregnancy
Mm-hmm.
is so different and can vary. So I think it's really important to kind of jump in and kind of talk about like what the heck is going on
Yeah.
when you get pregnant, because there is so much that is happening. Like you're experiencing hormonal changes, you're experiencing physical changes, you're experiencing emotional changes, and it can be a lot, especially if this is your first pregnancy. You just have no idea what to expect. So, you're having a huge increase in your hormones during the first trimester. And so this is leading to a lot of just different changes. And so typically you're going to experience fatigue. It
Mm-hmm.
is crazy in the first trimester, at least from my experience. You might experience some like emotional shifts, feeling a little bit more moody, maybe like happy and then really sad. It could potentially change your appetite, although I haven't really seen it a whole heck of a lot in the first trimester. And you could experience some nausea, morning sickness, breast tenderness. That was actually the first, like, I don't know if this is TMI. I don't really feel like it's TMI when we're talking about pregnancy and
Can't
postpartum.
be. Not for this episode.
Yeah. But breast tenderness, that was like the first, at least with Colton, my first, that was my first indicator that I was pregnant. I was like, ooh, this is like way more than I'm used to. The other thing that can happen is food aversions. So at least with this second one, I had like the ick for chicken. Like, didn't like
Is it better now?
Oh yeah, no. It went away after the first trimester, but like
Okay.
in the beginning, I wanted nothing to do with it. So I've actually heard some women have one of their first symptoms that they have is the sensation or like the taste that they're chewing on like metal, like they have a penny in their mouth. Yeah. So they're
Gross.
like chewing a lot of gum and yeah, a lot of different things. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like there are so many different things that you could be experiencing.
Yeah.
Um and is there anything that I'm leaving out that I'm thinking of?
Did you mention mood?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
the only thing is like it's probably, especially if it's your first, I would imagine it's the first time your body's gone through this drastic of a hormonal shift other than puberty, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
those are the two, like puberty, pregnancy, menopause. Like
Yeah.
those are the big swingers and you don't really like realize what's going on when you're a preteen. So like this is the first time that you're like aware of what the heck's happening.
Yeah.
So just like really big changes in mood, I've seen at least. I
Yeah.
feel like I see just a lot more like people who aren't normally as emotional, like just really tap into that, or they are forced to tap into it
Yes.
once that season begins.
Yeah, and I think it gets worse as like the further along
Good.
into your pregnancy, just from experience. But the other thing too is like obviously your body is changing, and it is so crazy how fast your body starts to change as far as like your belly like expanding, like your uterus is expanding, and like you also could have like swollen feet and like there's just so much. But then there's, I feel like, also the emotional side of like watching your body change, and
Yeah.
that can be really tough. And then also having the like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to get my body back like after? Because I know that that's a lot of conversations that I have with women in the DMs, is like women who are pregnant who are kind of like freaking out because they're like, oh my gosh, I feel humongous. And like you feel that way at 20 weeks, and then you get to like 38 and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought I was big back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, so some of the physical changes that you're experiencing is because your body has a very different priority now. Your priority is growing this baby and keeping you healthy. And so that's why you do experience a lot of fatigue. And so I've seen some doctors who kind of say that like every day of pregnancy is the equivalent of your body running a marathon every single day. Like, and that's why you were just so exhausted.
Mm.
So that is one of the reasons why training in nutrition is so important during your
Yeah.
pregnancy, because you can help combat a lot of these symptoms. So I'm really, really excited to kind of get into like the nitty gritty side of things.
Yeah. Do you want to start with training or nutrition?
We can start with training, I think. So like we kind of talked about before, there is this myth that like, okay, I can't start doing anything unless I was doing it previously. But that is not necessarily the case anymore. So the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists have kind of come out and said like, okay, like that's not necessarily the case. Like if you're healthy and your pregnancy is normal, it is safe to continue regular exercise and physical activity. So
Or even
it
start?
Yeah, or even start. Exactly. So this doesn't mean that you should sign up for your first CrossFit class and, just kind of like jump into things right off the bat. I would definitely recommend kind of taking things easy. But if you've been training, you've been exercising like a certain way, I think it's definitely okay to continue with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, it's just kind of meeting yourself where you're at with your energy more than anything.
Hmm.
Because like I'm thinking like first trimester mindset, your body hasn't changed as much as it will. And for many women, I feel like this whole trimester is like, I don't feel like I'm showing at all. Like, it's just like, I feel normal. Like, this is fine. I don't even, sometimes I just forget that I'm pregnant, other than being wiped all the time. And so I think, like, at least if I had to imagine myself in those shoes, because for me, it's all just imagining, but I would be like, I would feel probably pretty defeated if I was too tired to get a normal workout in, or like I'm doing something wrong because I'm feeling so tired. Because it's like you're not, I think it's the physical signal of having your belly sticking out that like makes you be like okay with the changes that are happening like energy wise. But in that first trimester, it's like I feel like crap and I've got nothing to show for it. So like what the heck, right? So there's that
Yeah.
pressure internally. Is any of that relevant for you?
Yes, feeling lazy. And then the other thing that's really tough is like I'm used to going to the gym and like a sports bra. And when you are initially pregnant, you kind of just look a little bloated. And so it's like that awkward, like, is she pregnant? Did she get fat? And so at least for me, that was really hard because I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, like I was, and I also kind of in like a new gym environment. So like, I didn't really know, like, I feel like I put my hand on my belly a lot just to like let people know, like, no, I'm actually expecting. But that was definitely something. And so I'll kind of talk about like how I think you should adjust training.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important to recognize that like, okay, physical activity does not increase your risk of miscarriage, low birth weight, or early delivery. Because again, I experience a lot of this in the DMs and the conversations I'm having with women is like, they kind of feel like I need to stop. I need to stop doing everything. And we're going to talk about rest and recovery and why that is incredibly important. But I think it's hard because it's like, I feel like especially for older women, you kind of feel like everyone is telling you to stop and rest, and you just need to kick your feet up, and that's what you need to do for 9 months is just not do
Yeah.
anything. And I don't necessarily really think that that's the case. Like, unless you have a condition where, like, you might need to be on bed rest, or you might need to either stop exercise or modify, like heavily modify. So that would be like if you're having twins or triplets, like that is something that you have a risk factor for preterm labor. So you might hear something from your OB if you have placenta previa. So this typically shows itself around second trimester though, so it's usually not something you need to really worry about in the first trimester. But again, if you have any sort of signs of preterm labor, if you have preeclampsia, and again, usually that doesn't really show itself until later. If you're anemic, if you have like severe anemia, anything like that, or just any sort of other high risk complication that I'm not mentioning. So there are certain things where you might need to discuss with your OB before you start anything, or again, what sort of modifications that you need to take.
Yeah. But I think outside of like those conditions or like high risk factors, I feel like the general way that the fitness industry, well, let me see, the general way that the evidence based fitness industry is trending with first trimester is to essentially keep doing what you're doing, barring any like super high impact, super jarring, like crazy exercise. Like, just do what you normally do and maybe just don't do like a crap ton of like super high impact jumping and like contact sports and like laying like slamming yourself on your belly. Like maybe don't do that, but like you can go on a run, you can lift weights, you can like do normal things. And if anything, something I was going to say too about the kind of shift into your pregnancy, the mentality switch that I think a lot of women might battle with is women who have only, and this is most women and people in general, who are not exercising regularly. It's a big thing of like why there might be fear around that is probably because you've only ever used exercise to shrink yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the mentality of what exercise is for. And so if you haven't actually made that shift of like strength training is to build muscle, is to build your strength, to build your physique, then it's like, of course you'd be scared to exercise because you're thinking about growing a baby versus shrinking your body. Like those are two opposite things, right? So it's
Yeah.
first getting out of the mentality that exercise is for shrinking or is for punishment or is for burning calories. It's for so much more than that. And then I think the general rule of thumb is if you are already active strength training doing those things is to keep up with that as long as nothing is going wrong in your appointments. And there's so many benefits for that, for you, for your baby, for your energy, and for honestly sanity, just going through changes.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, and I think it's hard because I've removed myself from that mindset.
Yeah.
So like
Lots
that's
of people.
yeah, so that's a really, really good point. But yeah, and it's scary. And so I talked about this previously with my first where I had some bleeding, I had some scares, and so I was intimidated by exercise. Then this is someone who was an avid weightlifter. And so I avoided it. And I think the other thing too, it's you just don't know what to expect. And so for myself, I was like, well, I would rather err on the side of caution and take it really, 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 really easy. Um, because it almost kind of felt selfish to want to lift and continue to do that. If that meant it was going to complicate my pregnancy. So I definitely understand those conflicting emotions. But again, like we were talking about, there are just so many benefits to exercise for both you and baby. But I think the other thing is kind of like once you've done it, you kind of trust your body a little bit more. And that was my experience during the second pregnancy. And I continued to train literally up until like 38, 39 weeks until I just went into like full on labor prep. But some benefits is it can potentially reduce back pain, may ease constipation, which is fantastic because we are at risk of hemorrhoids. So anything that we can do in that area, it can decrease your risk of gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, C-section. It can reduce stress, which is huge. Very, very, very important during your pregnancy. Like Marissa talked about earlier, can help improve mood. It helps promote healthy weight gain during pregnancy and just improve overall health and fitness. And what's really important is like all of this, because again, we want to have a healthy pregnancy, but it's also going to help with an easier labor, delivery, and as well as postpartum recovery period. So I've worked with a lot of clients who had previous pregnancies, didn't work out, didn't do anything, started working with me, taking care of the nutrition, taking care of their training, and then had a baby. And they're like, I cannot tell you how big of a difference this is with recovery. It's night and day. I feel fantastic. Like, and so of course this is anecdotal, but I mean the research has shown that as well. And I say, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I say it easier with like, quotations because it's, as
Yeah.
easy as pregnancy, labor, and delivery can be. But one of the things I really like that's not necessarily talked about is like, okay, yes, like you're doing all of this to help, but the big thing is also like you're getting into this routine, right? Like, especially if this is something that you have never done before and you're kind of getting into this routine, it becomes that much easier to continue it once baby is here rather than like, oh my gosh, okay, I want to lose the baby weight, but now I have a baby. I'm trying to figure that out. And now I'm trying to figure out health and fitness. And it can feel like, well, I'll just put it off. I'll just put it off. And the next thing you know, it's like maybe you're pregnant again and you got to do it all over and you don't really know what to do with health and fitness. So I think that just trying to, whether you're going like, or doing only a thing, something small, at least that's going to make it that much easier to continue once the baby is here.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess like in terms of prep in the first trimester, like, because I know that there's a lot of prenatal yoga, breathing, like things like that, but what can people get started with in their first trimester that's like a great intro to all the other stuff that we might talk about in parts 2, 3?
Yeah, yeah. So, I think it's important to think about like, okay, like how much. So the ACOG recommends 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise or activity every week. And so, one of the things that's super easy to get into right off the bat is just like low impact cardio. So you could go walking. Just like daily walks outside, you could go swimming, you can bike. And so these are all really gentle on your joints, which is important, which is really safe for pregnant women, especially as your body is going through so many changes. And so this will also help maintain cardiovascular health, which is, again, very important, especially when you're in the labor side of things. And you can do all this without putting too much strain on your body. And it's not going to really like be detrimental as far as like recovery or further fatigue you. And I would actually argue that if you, especially are just getting in like daily steps throughout the day, you might actually see an increase in your energy level. So this is going to be really, really important to combat a lot of different symptoms that you may experience during pregnancy. And then the other thing is just like Marissa was just saying, like the flexibility and like mobility. So just like yoga, just normal stretching. So this will really help a lot and can also alleviate any like tension that you're feeling throughout your body. And again, really prepare your body for changes ahead and can be really, really great for labor prep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you recommend starting like connection breathing as well in the first, or would you save that for later?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say that that's something that is important, even if you're not pregnant. Just like getting into the groove of things, kind of connecting with your core. And I think that would just make things a lot easier throughout the entire pregnancy.
Yeah. Yeah. I bring that up just because I think this is a time in people's lives where they are first introduced to the pelvic floor and to those musculatures in the body. So I was like, I mean, yeah, all the time, but like I don't think most people are gonna know exactly what that is. So really connection breathing is just like taking in like deep breaths and breathing out in a way where we are contracting and releasing our core, our deep core and our pelvic floor muscles. And there's video tutorials on it. Like we could put some in the show notes for you to just even start with that. But that's something that you could do like for 2 minutes a day. But drastically, I would say, at least from your experience, would you say has improved your ability to like help with recovery in that area, just in those muscles as a whole, as well as delivery?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard because, and it's like, is it because this is my second? Is it because I had an easier recovery? But like the other thing I'll mention is going to see a pelvic floor therapist is not something that you have to do postpartum. It is something that can really, really help. Again, like you're mentioning with the connection breathing, understanding the pelvic floor and how that information is useful for delivery and like labor can make pushing a lot easier and everything. And again, as far as recovery, but where was I going? I have like so many different thoughts that I want to go. But so again, it's always like, is it because this is my second that all of this was so much easier this time around, or was it because I was training more cognizant of my pelvic floor and all of that? So I don't know, but I definitely had a much, much better experience postpartum. And like my recovery has just been night and day difference. Like I got home and I was like cooking dinner for everyone like the second day I got home because I felt so good. And that was also something I had to kind of not rush. Like I didn't because I was feeling so good. I was like I literally feel like I could like go run and
Yeah.
like do all this stuff and instead Because my husband, he made a comment. He's like, I feel like you're still kind of taking it easy. I'm like, yes, I am. I was like, I know that I look good. Like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not like struggling, that I'm active. But I also know that one of the things I like to say with postpartum exercise is slow is fast when it comes to postpartum. Because there are, I was talking to my first pelvic floor therapist, and she was like, I will not tell you how many athletes come to me. They look fantastic. They look great because they rushed exercise because they were feeling good, but now have so many pelvic floor issues. And I really like the idea of slow is fast, because if you take it slow, you do your time, and kind of really thinking of returning to exercise. And again, we're kind of jumping ahead, but the
Yeah,
return of
you're talking
exercise.
part 4 here.
I know. But yeah, so I guess we can save that for part 4. But yes, pelvic floor connection breathing, really important.
I'm like, damn, wait a second.
I
I
know.
thought
I
this
just
was part
I
1.
just have all this stuff. I can really get excited about all this, but
Yeah. I mean,
uh
I'm glad that it's a topic you're passionate about, right?
yeah.
Um, but I do want to hit on the nutrition myth that I said people I alluded to that I will not mention. Um, as soon as the news was dropped to their family, they were like, their family was like, "All right, you got to eat for 2, right?" And like, one of the woman's husbands like piles up her plate at this family dinner, like, "Here you go." She's like 6 weeks pregnant, and he's like, "For the baby," and it's like this mound of food. And so let's talk about nutrition. What do we do with nutrition in our first trimester?
Yeah. I don't know if it's possible though to just talk about exercise just real quick. I have
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So I just have one more thing I want to share. So thinking about modifications. So like, I think that that's important to kind of touch on
Yeah.
right before. So, we're talking about all these different things that you can do. And again, your body really hasn't changed a whole lot. So you might not have to make any sort of modifications, but anything like, again, usually don't have to do anything until the second trimester, but like lying flat on your back, it can potentially reduce blood flow. So you might need some other positions, just like at an incline or anything like that. And then kind of like what we were talking about before, it's just monitoring your intensity, right? So like, you don't want to be going for like huge PRs. And again, I've
Yeah.
seen someone on Instagram who are
I've
keeping that
seen
up,
people
and
do it. Yeah.
yeah, and that's fantastic. But you also really want to protect your core. So for me personally, like I kind of stopped doing, like pull-ups and things like that, especially really where I had to like really, really brace. It's just kind of listening to your body. But we don't want to be doing like things in like extreme heat. So like probably
Yeah.
don't want to like go hike camelback in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And then wanting to really incorporate rest and recovery. So if you're used to training, kind of like you're talking about earlier, if you're used to training like 4, 5, 6, potentially 7 times a week, like you might need to scale it back a little bit and just kind of listen to your body. You might be sore and feel like you're not as recovering as well. And that's kind of your body's way of signaling like, hey, I need to slow down. So I think it's also really important, especially if you are new to exercise, like when do you stop? Like, when do you kind of like maybe seek medical advice, or like, hey, I need to literally stop right now in the middle of whatever I'm doing? And so this could be any sort of spotting or bleeding, any sort of like feeling dizzy, lightheaded, feeling faint, or having like a lot of shortness of breath, or any sort of severe cramping or pain. I typically recommend erring on the side of caution, right? Like I think that that's important in talking to your OB. So just wanted to put that in there before we ran into nutrition.
Yeah. Perfect. Cool.
Um,
Well, then, yeah, basically, mound of food. She's 6 weeks pregnant. She's like, "Bruh, I'm pretty sure this is not how this goes." And she reaches out to me right away. She's like, "This is not how this goes, right?" And I was like, "Not really."
no.
So the eat for 2 myth when it comes to increasing your caloric intake. What would you say in the first trimester really is the keys there?
Yeah. So your baby's energy needs are very small. Like your baby is teeny, teeny, teeny,
It's
tiny.
like
So during,
it's like a little pea.
Yeah. So generally there is no need for additional calories beyond like what is considered your normal intake. So I would say maybe if you were dieting, like if that was something that you were doing, maybe like, well, okay, pull back and let's kind of go more towards maintenance. But the other thing that I have seen that's tough is like when you're experiencing nausea and you
Yeah.
have morning sickness or you have food aversions, it can be really difficult even to maintain that
Yeah.
normal level that you were at. So it
I've seen a
might
lot
be
of
hard.
women undereat like during the
Hmm.
first trimester. And it's like, I kind of would get worried, like coaching them through that, but then it always ends up fine. So it's like your body's kind of doing what it needs to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would argue, we're talking about like extra calories. And so this is usually where I kind of say like it's not so much the quantity that you're eating, but more so the quality. And that can again be really hard when all you want are starchy carbs.
Yeah.
Because it's like I know that protein is so important, but like you're like, all I want are crackers and bagels and pasta.
Yeah.
Um, but if you are able, if there are ways that you can kind of sneak some nutrients in, really the quality and really focusing on nutrient dense foods, because this is going to help support both you and the early stages of development for your baby. So I will say I do recommend starting a prenatal a couple months before you
Yes.
start trying to get pregnant. This can help just like for a lot of different reasons, but especially because once you find out you're pregnant, you're already sometimes 4 or 5, 6 weeks along, and those early stages of development for your baby are really important. So definitely recommend starting a prenatal as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, just really trying to keep as normal and balanced of a diet as possible, assuming that you are eating a normal balanced diet. But if you're listening to this and you're like, no, my nutrition's been a mess, then just trying to incorporate high quality proteins, fruits, vegetables, and just trying to eat normal meals across the day as much as you can. But I know that somebody who's maybe coming into this who has only ever done low calorie diets or eating whatever the heck they want or like forgetting to eat or not having a cadence, finding that middle ground is really hard, which is why honestly like we recommend having a coach before pregnancy, having a coach if you are trying to conceive or you're in that season, because building those nutritional foundations for how to actually eat in a normal balanced way is huge, because then it just feels natural to try to continue that, and then you're just facing like the appetite changes. But what we can definitely say is for like a basic recommendation is and we could put this in the show notes too, like our balanced meal plate example diagram, but protein, starchy carbohydrates, vegetables or fruits, and healthy fats in portions to build out a balanced plate is a great place to start at least 2-3 times a day, if not maybe 3 to 4. And that can be a great place to begin. But definitely the prenatal, and if you're not already doing it when you're trying. And yeah, just don't worry about stuffing yourself just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not needed. And really, and we'll talk about this in the upcoming episodes, but you need a lot less than you actually think. And so really
Yeah.
we want to focus on the quality. And so really we kind of think about like kind of laying the groundwork for like a healthy pregnancy. And that's kind of what nutrition does. And it's creating this optimal environment for baby's growth. So like Marissa just said, the balanced plate, that's really, really important. And protein is incredibly important during your pregnancy, which I know
Yeah.
can be really, really tough in the beginning of pregnancy. So we can talk about practical tips like and kind of takeaways, like trying to sneak in like protein powder in like your, a smoothie or,
Well, that's
just,
one, that protein powder is a safe like food item. Like that's a myth, is like no supplements, right? And so as soon as you get pregnant, you think like I gotta change up everything that I'm doing, can't have supplements, gotta eat for two, can't exercise at all. Like we're just debunking a lot of that like out the gate, right? So a
yeah,
lot of supplements have do not use when you're pregnant or breastfeeding on them as a safety disclaimer, and that is primarily to legally protect the business of the supplement company. It typically doesn't have a ton to do with like really, really poor safety issues with the supplement itself. Now, I'm not going to say that's a generalization upon all of them, but if I'm talking like a multivitamin and a protein powder, I'm going to say they are definitely, they have been shown to be safe for pregnant and breastfeeding women. Because like generally, most people who have been in the fitness space for a while consider protein powder more as a food source than they do a supplement. But it is supplemental to add to your protein intake. But it really is just derived from milk, from whey, to create that powder. And of course, there's, it's processed, it's powder to add protein to your diet, but it is a really great food source to add into smoothies and things. So that's not necessarily something that you need to be afraid of. If you have been using protein powder, you don't need to cut it out altogether. Now, other individual supplements, that's going to be a conversation probably between you and your doctor. That's one that I feel confident about, is like, you could probably have protein shakes.
Yeah, and I mean, especially if you're having a protein powder from a reputable company that's third party
Yes.
tested. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend that. But protein is really important, and it for both you and baby, and it supports, of course, muscle development. Sure, that's like a no brainer, but also like uterine tissue growth. So it is really important, and I would say that like most recommendations are very low for women.
Yeah.
Very, very low. Like I've seen like aim for a minimum of 75 grams per day, which I think is incredibly low. But again, first trimester, it'd be hard to think about even eating like 25 grand. But we want to recommend lean meats, eggs, dairy, protein powder. I definitely would recommend, especially if you feel like you can't get it from other sources. But yeah, definitely really, really important.
Yeah. Anything else on nutrition, or do you want to move on to the last mindset piece?
Well, there are definitely some like key nutrients that we want to take. So this is why it's important to have that prenatal, because while you are eating, hopefully whole nutrient dense foods, we do want to make sure that we are getting kind of like filling those gaps. But folate is really important, so we want to make sure that that is in your prenatal. There's a huge debate on folic acid versus folate. But we want to try to eat that from natural food sources. So like leafy greens, citrus foods like strawberries, oranges, fortified grains, kidney beans, nuts, cauliflowers, beets. But this is important because it's going to help support neural tube development, which is incredibly, incredibly important in the beginning stages of pregnancy. So I think it's recommended uh, 400 to 600 micrograms per day. But again, check with your doctor. But choline, so this is really important. Same thing with helping with neural tube development, brain function, and other cell membranes. And so this is why eggs are like heavily recommended throughout the entirety of your pregnancy, which was very hard as a bodybuilder to go from like just egg whites to eating like 2 or 3 whole eggs per day. So really kind of getting out of that mindset of like thinking about calories and versus food quality, but like also like beef, chicken, broccoli, cauliflower, dairy. Those are all really good. Sources, and then iron, calcium, vitamin C, DHA, omega-3. So I can go into the nitty gritty, but those are all really important as well during the first trimester.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, the folate one is huge too. I forgot
Yeah.
about that one. Cool. All right. Well, then last but not least is mindset around your first trimester. And I think the thing that I really want to hit on here is just like what I know about it being just kind of a uncertain time, like especially if it's the first. But there's this, there's the general taboo of like, you don't tell anyone until you're basically out of the first trimester.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of maybe secrecy, or like kind of just telling your close circle, or feeling like, well, what if, because there's kind of this like mental safety net of like, once you pass 12 weeks, then everything's going to go great. But really, I mean, there's risk at all stages. It's just higher in the first trimester. And so I think it's just keeping a positive mentality around that uncertainty of like, I think that the healthiest mindsets that I've seen through pregnancy are the what's going to happen is going to happen mentality of like being unattached to the outcome and allowing whatever happens to be, and just being like, I'm going to do my best to take care of myself and the baby in this stage. But whatever, if you believe in a higher power, if you believe in the universe, whatever is meant to happen will be. And that's kind of the direction that I think a lot of the happiest and healthiest mental sides of pregnancy I've seen have been.
Yeah, I mean it's like we talk about in all these previous episodes, it's like control the controllables, right? Like
Mhm.
you cannot control like like how things are gonna like play out, but you can control your fitness and you can control your nutrition because those are going to give you the best outcomes possible. And so this is actually something that we didn't even touch on, which like I forgot to even recognize, but like there are so many benefits to like exercise for a baby as far as like short term, but also long term health outcomes. So it's kind of, I think, I don't know if it helps at all, but thinking like if I'm doing this, like I'm also helping my baby. So
Mhm.
again, it's going to help their development and they're going to have a healthier birth weight. They're going to have a reduced risk of chronic conditions, which is huge. So like diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular diseases, things like that, helps enhance their brain development, lower risk of preterm birth, improved heart health, like in, helping their immune system. So all of these things kind of recognizing like I'm doing this for someone else. And sometimes it does help
Yeah.
women, kind of like,
Accountability.
yeah, accountability. Um, but I love what you talked about as far as like the positive, like being positive about things, because stressing literally does not do anything for you, does not do anything for your baby. If anything, it's going to make things more detrimental. So I really do think kind of just having that like positive mindset and just kind of like being flexible with your routines and what maybe like adjusting your expectations. So I think that that's really important, and just kind of listening to yourself and try not to compare, because it can be really, really, really tough. I will say, like my first pregnancy, like I was comparing myself to people who were right around the same like uh, weeks as I was as gestation, and like being like, oh, their belly looks like this, or this is what they're doing with nutrition, or this is what they're doing. And that was not good for me mentally. And my second pregnancy, I was like, I do not care. I have a toddler that I need to take care of. Like, I just I'm like, my body's going to do what it's going to do. Like and so that's a lot easier said than done with my second. But yeah, just staying positive. And the other thing that I think that that does is, and I've seen this happen, is those who have a more positive mindset tend to have less symptoms of
Yeah.
pregnancy. And that can make the experience that much more enjoyable. Like when people would be like, hey, how are you feeling? I'm like, I feel great. They're like, really? Because they weren't used to that. They weren't used to hearing that. But I think it's like if you really focus on all the negative aspect, then you're probably not going to have a very enjoyable pregnancy.
Yeah. And you're
So
going to create more negative from it.
yeah, exactly. And then the big thing, you're kind of talking about earlier of feeling like, oh, if I was feeling fatigued, if I was feeling this, like, I'd feel lazy, or I'd feel like what was wrong with me. But I think it's really important to adjust your expectations and just kind of be like, okay, like I need to be flexible. If I wake up and I'm really tired, like I might like say, hey, today's an active rest day, or we're gonna take a nap.
Yeah.
And just you never know. Like I have a friend of mine who is very type A, and she had a very like she knew what she wanted her pregnancy, labor, delivery, breastfeeding journey, like all of these things to look like, and none of that happened. And I feel like that is the first introduction to parenting. It's like you can try to plan and try to control everything, but kind of letting some things go out of your hand and just adjusting and being flexible, because that will help a lot rather than stressing over the things that you literally cannot control. So if you are someone who is experiencing extreme nausea, extreme fatigue, and you're someone who's very active and you are like napping every day, that can be really hard. Because same thing, I was like, I was telling my husband one day, I was like, I'm so tired. He's like, Christina, you were like 39 weeks pregnant. I'm like, oh yeah. But yeah, I had a hard time kind of like kicking my feet up,
Yeah.
because I felt lazy, but definitely really, really important. So just kind of like recognizing like it's okay if I need to take a step back, and kind of put pause on things for a little bit, and just kind of saying like, you know what, okay, like I'm putting my health over performance right now. And that can be really tough, switching your mindset from like I'm going to the gym to hit PRs to like get super strong and look great, to be like, oh, I am preparing my body for labor and delivery, and that can feel hard, especially because it is 9 months. It's not just like an 8-week prep or something like that.
Yeah.
But just kind of reminding yourself that it's okay to slow down and adjust your goals as needed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have anything to add on trimester 1. Do you?
I will just say that like it might be important during this time to think about kind of having that community, having like a network of other
Yeah.
people that you can lean on, because like you were saying earlier, that like secrecy, because it is kind of taboo to discuss pregnancy before 12 weeks, which is a whole other topic, and I have a lot to say about that. But just having that strong support system, because again, like when you have people in your ear, again, like, oh, you need to eat for 2, or you need to rest and kick your feet up, just having like a coach or having other women who were kind of trying to do the same thing, that can be really important when it comes to just like advice, finding motivation, or having that like emotional support.
Yeah.
But then also seeking professional help. So having someone who is pre and postnatal certified, who can help you create a customized, personalized plan as far as nutrition, as far as training, that can also help you navigate the challenges of first trimester a lot more easily and more effective. So I will wrap it up there, because I can ramble when it comes to this stuff. But
Yeah. Well, I feel like, first episode here is really about setting the stage, like mindset wise. The first trimester and like expectations for the whole thing is when these
yeah,
conversations start happening. So, what I'm anticipating is probably that trimesters 2 and 3 episodes are probably going to be shorter, because it's more like we covered all the mindset, we covered like how this whole thing should go, but like specifically 2 and 3, like what's going on. And then the postpartum is kind of a whole nother wormhole. So that one will probably be longer. That's kind of like how I'm structuring it in my head.
yeah,
Would you say the
for
same?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Cool. All right.
yep, just wrap up like, safe exercise, nutrition, and self-care is really important during that first trimester. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit. Marissa's at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and hope to see you back next week.